So today we're going to take another look at how I got this shot. This is episode 10. If you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please do so. All right, guys, let's get right into it. So if we look at one of these images, this one as an example, is the one I had up before. You can see right away that this is slightly underexposed. And generally, a lot of times I will underexpose on purpose due to the fact that I know that I'm shooting in RAW and I can, adjust this in post. But the other reason is, if a person is wearing a light material, like for instance, she's wearing this kind of an eggshell colored dress, I want to make sure that I don't blow out the dress and it's something that I can save in post. Also, we have a white background here, and I'll show you simply how this lighting setup was done. And it's very, very traditional, the way it was done. Now, she has dark hair. She has, a warm skin tone. So let's just open this in Photoshop and let's just take a look at it really quick. And as you see here, what's going to happen is it's going to open automatically in RAW. And this was shot on a Sony camera. And let's zoom in a little bit here. You can see one of the main lights right here in her eyes. And let's just do an auto adjust, see what it comes up with. That's not going to get it. So let's do a white balance, raise the exposure up just a touch. Let's adjust our contrast. And then usually one of the things that I always go down and do is try and get Photoshop to see my camera profile. So we can see that that's working for us. So let's zoom in here really quick. So you can see in her eyes the main light. And you see it in both eyes here. So usually with an image like this, the first thing I would do is, obviously I would go in and I would look at my levels to see where everything is falling. See what I can adjust. I don't want to lose her skin tone. So let's get that about there. That looks pretty good for a quick edit. And there are little things that I would normally do. Like I noticed some inconsistencies in the shape related to the dress itself. Again, I've talked to you guys about this numerous times. There are a number of things that you can do in Photoshop that doesn't necessarily mean that you should do. Always strive to do your best, but accept the fact that you will make mistakes. So I'm just going to just nudge this in just a touch here and just even that out. Looks pretty good. You don't have to go overboard with these little adjustments. It's just enough to create that consistency or any little imperfections that you would have normally have seen that if you could have adjusted, on the day of, you could have, but usually that will really, really slow down your workflow. So if it's something that you can fix in post, little simple things like this, then I say go for it that way. If we look at that, that's the before, that's the after, not a big difference. And one of the other things that I noticed, and her mom mentioned it to me on the day of, that she had had a sunburn. And I mean, most of these are going to be really, really easy to fix. You can just go in and adjust your brush to right about the size. So this is the healing brush, and you want to adjust it to right about the size of what it is you're trying to heal, and you should be able to just draw right over it. You may have to make more than one attempt, but relatively, this is a really quick way before you get into your really more advanced editing. Now, if you're doing something for a modeling agency, most agencies really don't want a ton of editing on the photos. The models themselves, obviously, they're going to want, more done to their images. But if you're submitting to an agency and you want to work with agencies, you're going to have to follow by their guidelines. And most of the time, they'll tell you they don't want a lot of post-editing. Anything that could generally be covered by makeup or that won't be there a week from now, you can probably get away with adjusting that out. But really major changes, like if she had a scar or something like that, you don't want to remove those type of things. Because I've had, models that have like maybe scars on their arm or hand or something like that. That's something that's permanent. So even though in most situations, if they're going to hire that model, it's a good chance they'll cover that with makeup, or someone will be instructed in post to remove that. You don't want to be the person that does that as far as putting together their comp cards or something along the lines of that. So, all right, let's jump over here to set a light, and we'll look at how the lighting was set up for this. I am on a M1 Mac, and I do not believe that Satellite 3D is optimized for the new Macs, the silicone Macs. But you can see here it is loading relatively fast. So even using Rosetta, it's still loading fast. So I got, what do we have here? 2 more days left on this trial. So I'm going to try and knock out as many of these videos as I can, guys, you know, within my my time that I have allotted, so that you guys can have these videos and you can, you know, refer back to them at some point. So here under recent files, these are different files that I've saved, you know, playing around. I have some for boudoir, I have some for like the male stuff that I've done in the past. And here's one recently that I've done, which is, I just named it female headshot. So we're going to open that one. And you can get an idea of a classic headshot session. Now, one of the things that we did not have that I've added to this scene is this reflector here. I did not use a reflector in the image that I showed you. You can see here roughly what I had set up. Now, I'm going to show you what I didn't have and what I did use. I did use a background light, and it was placed directly behind the model. There was no hair light above her, and there wasn't a separation light as you see here. So this is how I would normally want to set it up if, you know, I had enough time to do all of my lighting setups, you know, where we weren't moving so quick between outfits and things like that. That's another thing that you guys are going to have to take into consideration when you're working with paid clients. A lot of times they have a lot of ideas and a lot of things they're trying to push out at one time within a time frame, you know, 2 hours or whatever it is. And if you're working alone or you're working with an assistant, here's where something like this comes in really handy, because then you got an idea between each wardrobe change what you're going to have to do. You know, if I'm going to be placing a reflector, if I'm going to be changing the lighting or something along that line. And if someone's helping you, you know, you can get that set up, you know, relatively quick. So again, I did not have this reflector. I did not have this overhead light. We did have a seamless background. We did have light falling onto the background, and we had a main light. So I was shooting at fixed focal length of 85 millimeters. It was at 1/200th of a second, f6.5, and an ISO of 200. Down here, we have the overhead view. And, you know, again, like before, you know, you can zoom in on that and take a look at, you know, your settings, how you have your lighting set up. So I'm going to, let's go over to, so here's all the different items that I have in the scene right now. So if I decide I want to take this reflector out, I would just turn it off. And as I said before, there was no overhead light. So let's see which one that is. That would be that one, okay? And so ideally, this is how it was set up originally in the studio. So I had a light behind her. I did have a light here. I'm just going to raise the power of that just a touch. And then the main light was actually an umbrella. I didn't put the umbrella in originally because it just takes up so much space in the scene. But, you know, I really want to be as accurate to this as possible. So the umbrella was slightly off to my right, and it was at a, I would say about a 45-degree angle downward. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, how many feet you actually have to work with, you know, to get exactly the dimensions of the room. You know, you can probably get that in advance. Like if you're doing a corporate headshot, you know, you can ask them if they know what are the dimensions of the room. And you say, okay, well, I know I'm going to be bringing in a, you know, in this situation, let's say you would be using a background stand, you know, where you're going to have the 2 stands and you're going to have the crossbar and you're setting up a backdrop, so you know the ceiling height. So you know exactly how high you can get that stand, how long the paper needs to be, things like that. So these are all very, very important bits of information that will help make your job that much easier. And then, you know, from a client's perspective, guys, you look so much more professional when you walk in, and you can get set up relatively quick because you've already done your homework and you know exactly what it is you need to have set up for them. Now, this type of lighting scenario works out really well for headshots, corporate shots, things like that. And if this was an environmental shot, you know, where it wasn't a solid white background, usually what you want to do starting off is you want to expose for the environment and then set your lighting accordingly if you're trying to keep the environment, you know, well lit in the scene. And then you would just apply your lighting and so on. But in this situation, since we are doing more of a corporate style headshot or modeling headshot, there are going to be situations where a lot of you starting out only have 2 lights. So to get that, to make that work for you, what I would do is, let's see, let me turn off. So we're going to turn off that one. And then I'm going to take this light and I'm going to bring it around behind the camera and then turn it around toward the model. That's still going to be about 45 degrees. So now what you have is a setup like this, where you have 2 lights. You have your main light and your background light. Now there's not going to be a separator light or anything like that, but you know, you're going to get some blowback from the white background. So one thing you want to definitely keep into consideration is the distance between this light, the background, and the reflected light back to the model. So it is very important that you guys, if you don't have a light meter, you should try to get one. And there are a number of different light meters you can get that are very inexpensive. You can even find them used on a number of different sites like B&H and places like that. And you can, you know, get you a light meter where you can meter the amount of light that's falling on the back of the model, their head or something like that, versus the amount of light that's, you know, traveling to the model. Or, you know, I usually meter from the model's face back toward the lens. So that will tell me, you know, give me a good reading of what light is actually falling on the model. And then I'll set my camera accordingly. Now, you know, if you're being a little bit more creative, you know, maybe the exact readings are not what you're looking for. You may want it to be a little bit more overexposed or a little bit more underexposed. So you just adjust your lighting accordingly, you know, to get that. Once you've locked in your ISO and your shutter speed, and you know exactly, you know, how much depth of field you're trying to get here. So let's say if this was going to be f8. So if we switch this over to f8 as an example, you'll see how much it darkens down the image because, you know, you've gone almost 2 stops, right? So let's go back to 6.3. So ideally, this is a very, very simple, easy to set up lighting scenario for corporate headshots, modeling headshots, things like that. It's just a traditional headshot. So that's what we're, you know, what we were working with. So if we go back to that last image and we're going to wrap this up, that's exactly what we're doing here. You know, we're doing something more portraity. This would not be my first pick for an image for an actual headshot. So ideally what I would do if I was going to be picking for the model, I would go with something more akin to this. You know, just a traditional headshot, just showing the face, you know, from the lower chest all the way up to above the head. That's going to be a traditional headshot. It really depends on the agency, what they're asking for. Each one is going to be a little bit different. You know, and one of the things that I always ask my models when they come in, you know, is what agency are you trying to submit to? And in some cases, they know who it is they're going to be submitting to. So let's say this could be a perfect headshot. So, you know, you just open that in Photoshop really quick. Let's just go through this really quick. So we're going to hit our exposure, get our white balance, bring our exposure up just a bit, contrast down a little bit, and go down, get our camera profile set there, Just a quick way of doing it. So then ideally what I would do here is I would crop this to a traditional headshot. So something like that. And that would be our headshot. That's a little long, but you know, you kind of get the idea. So, and then you would just go in and do the other things that, you know, I showed you before, you know. So if, you know, there are some, you know, things like here where she has the sunburn, where the peeling skin, you know, you would just go in with your healing brush, you know, just touch that up really quick. You don't want to do a whole bunch of editing on these photos. You want to get them out as quick as possible. And you want to stay within the guidelines of what the agency is asking for. Now, if there is no agency involved and they're going to just be submitting these, you can give them your feedback as to what you think, you know, an agency might be looking for. But if they're not willing to follow that, man, just, you know, edit the way they want them edited, and, you know, you're good to go. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this video up. This has been episode 10 of How I Got the Shot. Hopefully you guys are learning something, and if so, hey, I've done my job. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys on Instagram and Facebook and all the other normal social medias, you know, we all communicate on. And until then, I want you guys to stay safe. It's been your boy Rome. Peace. I'm out.